Hello, friends, and welcome. My name is Popeye, and today we're playing some more Higurashi Chapter 5 Mayakashi. Um, I don't like to make promises for things, so I'm not going to promise that we're finishing this game tonight. However, I'm like 95% certain that we're going to get through it today. I'm prepared to go a little bit longer to see that happen. Um, As always, let me give you a trigger warning for this game. This game is not for everyone. I'm going to list some things that are in this game, and if those are not for you, please find somewhere that you'd rather spend your time. With that in mind, this game deals with the following things: torture, abuse, child abuse, blood, gore, murder, assault, um, any of those things against like a child as young as like 10, foul language, and yeah, if any of those things are not for you, please find yourself somewhere else to be tonight, today, whatever time it is for you. Before we get into it, we'll do the summary of last episode. If that trigger warning didn't convince you, this summary might. So last time we just finished dumping Rika's body, in dead body in the well in the basement of our torture chamber. Her apartment mate, as it were, Sadako, called like, "Hey, where's Rika?" We were like, "Oh, she's here eating with us. You should come too." So Sadako comes, and we trap her in the dungeon too. Then, Keiichi calls us, and we have to pretend to be normal. And he has this idea that something bad's gonna happen to Rika, because something bad has happened to everyone we've talked to about entering the ritual storehouse. So basically, him, Shion, and Rena go check out their house. It's locked. They use a ladder to look up into the window because they live on the second floor of this. It's like a tool shed kind of thing. They're not there. They check the shrine. They're not there. Eventually, they call the whole town. They do a search like they did for the mayor. Of course, we as Shion know they're not going to be found because they're both in our torture dungeon. But we have to pretend as we are acting as basically the head of the city or the town at this point. So we have to pretend that we're looking for our friend and fellow residents of this town. When that's done, we go back to our torture chamber where Sadako is waiting, and we had tied her up to a cross. So her arms are strapped out. She's in, T-pose on this cross. We go take a look at the mayor first, who we had hung up by his wrists slightly higher, so he had to like pull himself up by his wrists and be on his tippy toes to be able to breathe. He's dead. He did not last. I think we just leave. No, we stab a sword into the side of his body to make sure he's dead, and then we pull him up even more and just like leave him hanging there. And then we turn our attention to Sadako, who of course is close enough that she could see and probably hear the mayor as he died. She's been able to talk to Mion, who's been in the prison cells, and sort of has a gist of what's happening. We then go, and Mion is pleading for us to let Sadako go, and we're like, no, because you had the same opportunity with Satoshi. I was in your position, maybe not in a prison cell, but I was begging, I was crying, I was pleading, and you did nothing, so I'm gonna do the same. And then she lies to Mion and says, maybe if you apologize 1,000 times, I won't kill her. Mion starts apologizing immediately. We ignore that. We take a knife of some kind and just start going down her arm, just like incision after incision, going going through skin, through bone, until she can't feel anything in her arm. Probably a combination of just destroying her nerve endings, adrenaline, and shock. And Sadako starts crying out for Satoshi, and we're like, you always call for him. And at that point, Sadako has this brilliant character development moment where she goes like, I know I was a burden to my brother. I know I was a pain. I know I hurt him, his physical and mental and emotional health when he was here. But I've dedicated my time to becoming independent, to making sure that when he returns, I will not be a bother to him. And as Shion, we're busy stabbing into her other arm at this point and slicing her. I think we slice one of her arms from wrist to elbow at one point, all the way open. And we were having this internal dialogue where we're thinking, Sadako here still truly believes that Satoshi is alive. We did not. We gave up. We were internalizing all of our feelings, trying to run away, trying to just not feel the pain, the sadness. We killed him off to protect ourselves. And then eventually Sadako dies, and Shion has this moment where she's looking into Sadako's dead eyes and is like, she's with her brother in the afterlife at this point because she fulfilled her promise of waiting for her brother and becoming self-reliant. And then Shion has like this sudden moment of clarity of, she remembers the last thing Satoshi said to her, which was, take care of Sadako. She kind of has this remorseful bit for a sec, where she's like, I've failed Satoshi. And then she goes back to just being insane. And being like, well, I'm a demon, we've come this far, there's nothing can save me now. And then Keiichi calls again, and Tim and Rena are coming to our house, and that's, I think, where we stopped, is they're just about to enter our house. So yeah, let's load this up. Once again, if that summary did not reinforce some of the major themes of this game, I don't know what will. Having replayed this, to me this is probably the goriest chapter of any of them. I rewatched all the torture scenes, all the murder scenes, because I was like, okay, I watched this in probably 2008, 2009, so I was like 15, 16 or something at the time. I'm like, okay, you know, that was like, what, 12 years ago, 13 years ago? Has it changed? Does it still have the same impression? It's still gory. I watched all of it, knowing what happened, having seen it already, and I was still grossed out by some of those scenes. So a warning for anyone who watches it, it is far worse if you watch the anime. But yeah, with that, let us proceed to what I think will be the ending of this game. Also, I've been told at some point that there is a decision in this game that is trivial. We haven't come across it yet, so I'm assuming it's right near the end. I think we're going to have time to do both. I can't see why not. So when we get to that point, we'll save, we'll do one, then we'll load save and do the other. It took them a long time to come for me. I had to wait until the following morning. I opened the gate without checking who was ringing the doorbell. I didn't even care who it was. If it was the police, that'd be fine with me. If it was Kei-chan, could he defeat me? Keiichi and Rena were there.
こんな時間に珍しいね。二人とも学校は？学校は休んだよ。ケイちゃんはともかく、レナも？二人とも不良なんだからな。
I laughed.
立ち話もなんでしょ？入りなよ。
I didn't think Rena would come. I thought it would be either the police or Kei-chan alone. I'll try tricking Kei-chan into coming with me to the underground storehouse. Brenna, why don't you try to figure out what I'm attempting to do and stop me? You too, Kei-chan. You figured out I was Shion, why don't you try and figure out the rest? I will act like a demon. I will struggle until the very last moment, so don't hold back. Please don't hesitate to kill a filthy demon like me. Hello, Samuses, how is it going?
Mio, まず謝ることがある。
ケイちゃんが何を？
綿流しの晩、俺は神社の。
Ah, you did end up going to your brother's? Yep, have
入っ
fun.
たんだ。
Don't worry about me. I'll be alright. You just take care, have fun. Thank you for checking in. You're worried about me. Do I do lots of things that worry you? If I do, I find that worrying. Now I'm worried about me too, Samuses. I didn't expect this to start with an apology. Okay, so he admitted his sin of entering the ritual storehouse. I guess that was manly of him. I play Steins Gate. It's enough to worry anyway. I don't even care if the storehouse is forbidden anymore. Whatever. That rule came from those who believed it was even a sacred place at all.
Mio, おととい、リカちゃんとサトコを呼んだ
I
の。
mean, you should worry even more, Samus. I recently convinced a coworker of mine to purchase and play Steins Gate, Legend of Heroes, Trails of Cold Steel, and maybe this one doesn't worry you as much, Final Fantasy IX, which is my personal favorite of the Final Fantasy games. And they had never heard of Steins Gate. They had no idea. The plot summary I gave them was, it's about a dude in university and his friends who invent time travel. He's going in blind. He knows it's about time travel. He knows there's multiple endings, but he's like, I've made this mistake before where a game has multiple endings and I've looked it up, so he's doing a completely blind first playthrough of it, and then he's going to do an endings guide. So, yes. So if he comes back to be like, I got the ending where we rape her 100 times over, I'm gonna be like, I'm so sorry, man. I'm just thinking back on that last statement. You probably should be worried that I play Steins Gate.
覚えはないけど、そう思うに足る根拠があるなら聞かせてもらえる？
But yeah, he had played through chapter 1 the other night, and he was like, oh, it's pretty good. I don't think he's really a fan of, like, visual novels. He wishes there was a bit more interaction to it. He's like, the characters are good and the story is good, so. And I mean, what's in chapter 1? I think chapter 1 is just, you find out that Christina's dead, you run back, and you end with like, oh, something's not right with this world because you've switched into the beta world line.
夕方過ぎのお夕食前の時間、リカちゃんが来たはずだよ。お醤油の大瓶を持ってお裾分けしてもらいに。
Rena spoke with confidence. She wasn't even trying to gauge my reaction. She was simply telling me the truth. That cleverness was very pleasant to see.
どうしてそう思う？そんなに難しい
I feel more
話じゃない。
sorry for them for sitting through Cold Steel, the game that took me 99 hours. Let's assume that, I don't know, 20 hours of that were just stream, because talking to chat always makes things longer. Even still, that game's probably like a solid 80 hours, maybe like 75, 80-hour game.
みーちゃんも見たでしょ？リカちゃんの部屋。冷ややっこがあるのに。
Final Fantasy IX, I don't remember being so long. It was maybe like a 35, 40-hour game.
そして流しの下にあるはずの醤油の大瓶も瓶ごとなかった。
何それ。それが私のとこへ来る理由になるわけ？
Rena sure is sharp. I tried to beat around the bush, but she was confident in her conclusions. She was cornering me. She was doing such a great job, too. It really put me at ease. Okay, demon. Rena knows what she's talking about. What kind of excuse are you going to come up with now?
長くなるから説明は省くけど、冷蔵庫の中身がみーちゃんの呼び出した話の内容まで如実に物語っちゃってるの。
There it is. This game is over. Okay, the game's over. Yeah, the stream's done. Rena solved it. No. Rena, I was right about you. I don't like you. You really are just too sharp. Shion is so obtuse that she never even recognized this side of you.
これはとんだ名探偵が身近にいたもんだよ。まさか冷蔵庫の中身だけで電話の内容まで見破るとは。参ったな。参った参った。
I laughed like crazy. I laughed because I was having so much fun. I sensed the poison inside of my stomach dissipating and felt free and refreshed.
ミオ、警察はもうとっくにお前を疑ってるんだ。この家も大石さんの部下が踏み込もうと今も様子を伺ってる。
Kei-chan was threatening me, telling me I couldn't run or resist, so I should just surrender and accept my fate. You aren't doing that intensely enough, Kei-chan. Shouldn't you grab my collar and knock me to the ground? Today is the day I'm prepared to die. After that, they went easy. Because they just wanted to know the reason why Mion committed such crimes. You all are being too lenient about this. I'm a demon. I'm a murderer. Are you saying that if you can understand the reasoning, murder is okay? A demon is a demon. A murderer is a murderer. Whether their motive is to have fun, to live, or to take revenge, that makes no difference. Why do you even want to know that? Why don't you just tackle me and take me to the police? Look there. The demon is trying to deceive you.
初めてご挨拶申し上げます。園崎本家当主跡継ぎミオンでございます。本日はようこそ園崎本家においでくださいました。当主お寮に代わりまして皆様にご挨拶申し上げます。皆様におかれましてはいろいろお尋ねになりたいことがおありの様子。私にお話しできることでしたら包み隠さずお話ししたいと存じます。
I then told them about the strange events that led to Onikafuchi village becoming Hinamizawa, which Takano-san had told me about before. About half of it was the truth, but the other half was completely made up. I just made it sound like it was only natural that their best friend committed such a gruesome crime. Eiichi and Rena were both overwhelmed by the history of Onikafuchi village, which was swallowed by this gloomy fate. Oh well, I guess I made it sound interesting enough. I'm sure they enjoyed hearing me tell the story. But you know, I'm the one who committed the incidents that happened in the present time. What was the point in listening to those old folk tales? Thinking it'll make your best friend's crime easier to swallow? You're just trying to satisfy yourselves. I'm a demon. I'm a murderer. I have sinned. These old folk tales have nothing to do with the crimes I've committed. The way those two listened to me so intensely almost made it fun. I told them that people used to make canned human meat and conducted gruesome research during the war. Those were things Takano-san told me. Hey, you two. Haven't you realized yet? Haven't you realized what I'm talking about has nothing to do with what we're dealing with right now? You both look so serious, except for Rena, who just looks surprised, and Kei-chan looks bored. You are such fools.
南沢村を再び鬼ヶ淵村のように崇められるに足る神聖な存在に。それが我ら鬼ヶ淵村の末裔の悲願であり、 園崎本家の鬼を継ぐ者の宿命なのです。
鬼を継ぐ者？
我が園崎本家は代々当主の名に鬼の一字を加える習慣があるのです。私の名前を手のひらにでも書いていただければ一目瞭然かと。
Keiichi tried to write Mion on his palm.
本当だ。鬼という文字が含まれてる。
名前だけではありませんよ。この体にも鬼が刻まれているのです。
I stood up and made to show my bare back. Of course, I don't actually have a tattoo there.
いいよみーちゃん。見せる必要なんて全然ない。
Good, because we were bluffing. We are not the ones with the demon tattoo.
ありがとう。
I laughed a little. They must really believe that I'm their best friend, Mion. My goodness. The demon has won already. They were doing so well at the beginning, too. I eventually sat back down after I finished telling my made-up tearjerker stories. It's your loss if you all shed any tears now. I looked at Keiichi. He wasn't crying, but he was overcome by emotion. I looked at Rena. Surprisingly, she still maintained an aggressive look, showing me her will to fight.
でもみーちゃんはリカちゃんとサトコちゃんを殺したんだよね。
Good, Rena. You know what I just told you isn't an excuse for murder. You usually act like a goofball, but that's not how you really are. You sure are something. You're far sharper than Shion.
他の人のことは殺してもいいとも言わないよ。でもとにかくみーちゃんはリカちゃんとサトコちゃんを殺した。
弁解はしないよ。私には鬼が宿ってる。名前にも体にも心にも。でも手を下したのは鬼じゃない。園崎ミオン。私ミオンが望んだからリカちゃんとサトコが死んだ。それは変わらない。レナの言う通りだよ。
Come on, Rena. Try to figure out who I really am. You still believe Shion, my victim, is the real culprit? Or Shion, I'm making Rena believe that you're responsible. That was it for Rena, though. She couldn't figure out I was Mion.
自首しよう。
Rena spoke to Mion.
私たちも一緒に行くよ。親友を一人きりになんか絶対にしない。
泣くことレナには勝てないわ。
We literally just killed a crying child. What do you... Let's not get into that. Too bad, Rena. I've won.
自分で自分の罪どのくらいになるかよくわかってる。たとえ自首が認められても多分もうここに帰ってくることもないと思う。だから最後にわがままを聞いてほしいな。
何かな。
30分でいいからケイちゃんと二人きりにしてほしい。
Keiichi looked startled to suddenly hear his name. You're so insensitive, Keiichi. That's what made my sister cry.
ケイチ君どうかな。ケイチ君が嫌なら無理にとは言えない。
そうだね。嫌ならそれでもいいよ。私は鬼だもの。ケイちゃんはよそから引っ越してきた正真正銘の人間。相入れることなんてお社様が実在して仲介してくれない限り絶対にない。
Keiichi hesitated a little. Come on, Kei-chan, condemn me. Condemn me and tell me you'd never go.
ああ、いいぜ。
ありがとう。
Fool!
私からもありがとうを言うよケイチ君。
Rena stood up. As promised, she made to
あ、い
leave.
いよレナ。 ここで待っててくれれば。ケイちゃんとは庭をぐるりと回りたいだけだから。退屈だったら私の部屋へ行けばいい。漫画とか好きに読んでていいよ。あ、なんだったらお気に入りの単行本丸ごと持ってってもいい。
嫌だよ。みーちゃんの本はみーちゃんのものだもの。勝手にレナの家に持って帰れない。
あんたはこんな時に限っていい子なんだから。
I took Rena's head and rubbed it like Satoshi-kun used to do to me.
じゃあ行こう、ケイちゃん。
The game was over. Too bad, Rena. At least this was more fun than if Kei-chan came alone. If he did, he would have asked me to run away with him after hearing my stories. Rena's eyes were like those of a judge. In those eyes, I sensed both affection and observance. I said 30 minutes, so she would probably only wait for 30 minutes. If I took even a second longer, she'd call Oishi. I'm a little disappointed. Rena still thinks I'm Mion. She didn't manage to see through me. I thought someone like her would see the demon in me. I guess I was wrong. Too bad. Keiichi followed me after putting his shoes
腕
on.
組んでもいいかな。
Such a humble request.
別に構わないぞ。
I took Keiichi's arm. It was warm as Satoshi-kun's. Felt a little
私に腕を組まれ
bewildered.
たらなんだか緊張しちゃわない？例えば急に関節技を決められちゃうんじゃないかななんて思ったりとか。
姉妹揃って同じことを言うんだな。思わないよ。全然。
He was remembering the time when I held his arm in
シオン
town.
もケイちゃんのことが好きだったみたい。
そうなんだ。
I told him how my sister felt. Shion was with Satoshi-kun for a long time. But what they had was friendship. They never had anything more than that. That was why she fell in love with Keiichi. If I were in her position, I would also have fallen in love with him. If Shion was able to fall in love with him, then I could fall in love with him too. Keiichi smiled gently. I almost saw Satoshi-kun in that smile. The Keiichi I knew was worthless and superficial. I never realized he could smile like Satoshi-kun.
ミオンとシオンは仲は良かったんだろ？
さあどうかな。ケイちゃんは自分の右手と左手は仲がいいと思う？
え？右手と左手？それは仲がいいとか悪いとかそういう言い方で例えるものじゃないな。
そういう関係だから。仲がいいとか悪いとかそういう尺度では測れない関係。
We'd been together since we were born. We'd been living in this world as a pair. I was Mion, and she was Shion. Mion was treated specially, and I insisted on being her. Of course, that was unpleasant for Shion. Deciding to be fair, we switched places all the time. We were probably different from other identical twins. We didn't only like the same things, or do things the same way. We even managed to share our knowledge and experiences. When we talked about our experiences, we could share them. As Mion and Shion, we shared everything. That was why each of us was both Mion and Shion at the same time. No, maybe Shion was the only one who thought that way. I was a little different than that. I was simply letting Shion be Mion once in a while. I was Mion, the successor to the Sonozaki family. I was supposed to be treated specially. I always thought that was my privilege. Just like everyone tried to distinguish between Mion and Shion, I also tried to distinguish between us.
例えば利き腕というものがあるように右手と左手には間違いなく優劣の違いがある。もしも鍋つかみが片方しかなかったら迷うことなく利き腕にするでしょ。そういう差はあったんじゃないかと思う。だからといって左手がなくなったっていいなんて思う人は誰もいないはず。そんなよくわからない関係だね。
それは近くにいすぎるから見えなくなっているだけで、きっととても仲のいいことなんだと思う。俺は一人っ子だから、祭りの前日ミオンとシオンが二人してじゃれ合っているのをすごく羨ましいと思った。
ないものねだりじゃないの。双子なんて昔は人をからかったりしてそこそこに面白かったけど、こうして互いがはっきりと異なる個性を持った今ではかえって邪魔なだけ。
As an older sister, I felt I was mean for thinking that way. As punishment, I became Shion. Who am I? I never had a solid identity in the first place. I was Mion, and I was Shion. I should have just accepted that. Something has changed. I don't even know if I'm Mion or Shion anymore. Had I really been stupid enough to hope that Rena would figure out that for me?
シオンはまだ生きてる。
本当か？
Keiichi looked into my eyes. I nodded quietly.
誰よりもむごたらしい死に方をさせてやろうとずっと考えて閉じ込めておいたけど、今日までその方法はとうとう思いつかなかった。
This was a lie. I'd already come up with ideas. I've already begun to execute them. I dumped the hag into the well in front of Shion. I dumped Kimiyoshi and Rika in there. I even killed Sadako too. And right now, I'm plotting to kill Keiichi, who Shion fell in love with. I am a demon. Any such gruesome act is simply pleasure to me. That's when I felt a warm hand rubbing my head. It wasn't Sadoshi's hand, but Keiichi's. Keiichi and Satoshi-kun are totally different. Why did Shion fall in love with him? His rough hand didn't make me happy. That he understood my feelings was just my imagination. I wasn't happy. It didn't feel good. It didn't.
来て。私の罪のすべてを見てほしいから。でもそれはケイちゃんにとってこの上なく辛い光景かもしれない。
I'm going to commit my final crime. I'm gonna let you see it. I'm gonna let Shion see it. When I do, are you still gonna think I'm your best friend? Poor Shion. Kei-chan is going to die thinking it's you who killed him.
引き返すなら今だよ。ケイちゃんの中の園崎ミオンがどんな人かは知らないけれど、中に入ればそのミオンはきっと
変わらない。何度だって言う。園崎ミオンは俺の最高の親友だ。
You are such a fool. You don't sound cool at all. I don't understand human feelings because I'm now a demon. But I think I can understand why she loves you. I opened the iron door to the underground storehouse and beckoned Keiichi inside. Come on, Keiichi. This is obviously a trap, don't you see? This basement is transparently suspicious. Don't you think you should run to the police? Keiichi was reckless. He swallowed and stepped inside. Huh. You really are a fool. He went down the stairs of the basement. I led him into the torture room. Everyone is shocked their first time visiting this room. I used to be that way. Of course, Keiichi looked surprised too. But he was trying not to show it. Obviously, he wanted to express his shock at seeing this horrifying room. But he also knew if he voiced that shock, that he would be rejecting his best friend, who was trying to confess her sins to him. So he did everything he could to stifle his
大
surprise.
昔の当主の書き物によるとね、血のしぶきってのは犠牲者に負担をかけない割にはインパクトがあるんだってさ。綿流しは見せしめのショーだったから、私のご先祖様たちは様々なショーを考案してたんだよ。ほら、そこが鑑賞席なんだよ。綿流しは見せしめのショーだから、客がいなきゃ意味がない。
Keiichi smiled quietly as he listened to me. No matter what cruelly came out of my mouth, he would embrace me. Was this really the superficial Keiichi Maibara I knew?
みんなここで私が殺した。見てくれている観客はいなかったけど、私は綿流しを上手にやってみせた。いや、観客は一人だけいたかな。
え？観客？
私という鬼がミオンの執り行う綿流しをずっと見てたから。
I started to laugh. How many hints do you need, Keiichi? When are you gonna figure out I'm not really your best friend? Come on, hurry up. Running out of time, the game is almost over. This was a game. This was a game of murder. I had killed people, using my revenge for Satoshi-kun as an excuse. The demon was trying to capture Keiichi and kill him before Mion's eyes. Keiichi had a chance. Figured out I wasn't his best friend, and he'd win. If not, he was out. When did I come up with that rule? I guess it was sometime today. Or did I come up with it just a minute ago? I mean, a minute ago is sometime today. Since the two of them aren't too bright, I decided to be easy on them, I guess. You are Mion's best friends, right? Don't you believe in her? You already made Mion into a murderer within yourselves? Why don't you try to protect the Mion within you? Why don't you try to believe your friend can't be a murderer? You'd believe until the very end like Sadako did. You wouldn't have realized I wasn't Mion, your best friend, just someone who looks like her. But if you can't still believe that I'm Mion, then you're just like me. I killed the Satoshi-kun within me so easily, and you will do the same. You don't deserve to
向こう
live.
が牢屋。
シオンはそこにいるのか？
You're not going to make it. Once we reach Shion's cell, your time is up. The demon will
シオ
win.
ン！シオンか！
ケイちゃんなの？
Keiichi ran to
大
the
丈夫か
cell.
シオン？怪我はしていないのか？
Shion screamed. I was standing right behind Keiichi. It was time. My preparations to kill the boy she loved were complete. For her, this was going to be the worst possible
落
torture.
ち着けシオン。もう全部終わったんだ。全部。
Keiichi tried to quell Shion's distress by talking to her in a calm voice. It was such a funny sight. Keiichi was the only one who had no idea what was going on.
シオン、ご機嫌はいかがだった？もう誰の死を見るのも嫌。私が憎いなら早く私を殺してよ。憎いのは私なんでしょ。早く殺して
落ち着けってシオン。もう終わったんだよ。大丈夫なんだ。だから落ち着け。
安心しなよ。あんたは殺さない。まだまだ殺さないんだから。
It's game over. I gave you enough chances. Cornered me quite well, once. But that was it. You couldn't figure out that I'm not your best friend, Mion. You couldn't believe that Mion isn't a murderer.
「そんなに死にたければこの男を殺した後にゆっくりとひき肉にしてやるよ。古式にのっとり獅子の先端から少しずつガリゴリと削ってミンチにしてやる。あの肉引き器はあんたのために取っておいてあるんだからね。それともそれでケイちゃんをミンチにしてみせた方があんたには面白いかな。
おい、いい加減にしろ。今さら怖がらせてどうするんだよ。
Here you are, demon. Go ahead and take my soul. I've been living my life to avenge Satoshi-kun. That wasn't what he wanted from me. That was just for my own satisfaction. I couldn't even face Satoshi-kun. I'll bring this to an end in the way I want. The world became a total mess. Satoshi-kun hates me, and I hate myself too. I'm gonna complete my revenge. I don't want anyone to sympathize with me. I won't pretend to be some tragic heroine either. I'm gonna become a murderer that nobody could sympathize with. So please, grant a suitable final moment to me. A bluish-white flash filled the huge cave. Keiichi fell down like a doll. Shion reached out to him from the other side of the bars. She screamed at me not to kill Keiichi. Go ahead, cry and blame me. Don't even think of offering your forgiveness. I'm the most rotten existence in this world. So please, grant me the worst possible ending. Shion begged me desperately to let Keiichi go. I simply abused her, slandering her, and disgraced her. The more Shion suffered, the deeper I'd fall into hell. It wasn't enough. I wasn't even close to deep enough. It wasn't deep enough to compensate for my sins. I dragged Keiichi to the table that I tried to put Sadako on, and restrained him there. Keiichi began to move sluggishly. The stun gun must not have worked too well on him.
これから始めるよ。ケイちゃんの若い悲鳴をたっぷりと楽しみな。
Is this the choice? Okay, this is the choice. So, we're gonna save at this point. Okay. So we have two choices. Okay, I'm gonna pick the top one first. At that time I became aware of Keiichi's gaze. We're gonna do that one first. Once this... We're gonna run this to the end, and then we're gonna load back and do the second bit.
いい加減にしろ。
Keiichi's growl resounded from the pits of his stomach. What a delightful sound. It's like he wanted to rip me apart.
ようやくお目覚め。私、さっき嘘をついたね。シオンを一番むごたらしく殺してやろうと思って閉じ込めておいたけど、まだ思いつかないって言ったやつ。あれが嘘。
I smiled menacingly. I laid out the huge nails and hammer specifically made for the nail
あの
table.
子に自分のせいで死ぬ大勢の人の悲鳴をたっぷりと聞か
I'm
せ
gonna give another warning. If you don't like torture, this is your time to duck out.
なかなかセンスいいでしょ。
お前は誰だ？
は？ミオンでしょ。園崎ミオン。恐怖で頭が変になっちゃった。
違うな。お前が園崎ミオンであるはずがない。
My hand stopped dead in its tracks. Kei-chan? Shit. I decided it'd be too late once we reached Shion's cell. The name-guessing game is already over. Oh well, whatever. Bring it on. I'll listen to you. This is your last chance.
じゃあ、私がミオンじゃなかったら。
I think we picked the canon ending. Come on, Kei-chan. Guess who I am? Yep, no worries, Samuses. Try and save Mion, the girl who fell in love with you. And then, I heard it. I most definitely heard it. Keiichi's mouth trembled as he spoke the words, yet his eyes shone with a strong conviction. And he spoke the truth.
だな。
Oh no, we didn't pick the canon ending. If memory serves correctly, he just says you're the demon. Wow. You're right. You actually won. You're amazing, Kei-chan. And once again, the song comes back to Shion in a very sad lament, probably because since Keiichi was able to see her for who she really was, she feels an affinity towards him at this point, even though it's too late for her. A strange feeling fills my chest as I shiver. I had convinced myself there was no way he could guess, but he did. I couldn't help feeling a bit surprised. This Keiichi had yet again pierced through my disguise.
お前はミオンじゃない。さっきまで一緒だったミオンを返せ。
Who are you? You aren't Mion, right?
だから私ミオン
No, that's not it. That wasn't what I meant. You aren't Mion.
どうして私がお姉じゃないって思うんですか
I don't know, just a feeling. In my mind, memories of the time Keiichi recognized me at the toy store had been revived. Yes. Even back then, Keiichi could tell that I wasn't my sister, Shion. I had feigned composure and offered a comeback with a straight face. On the inside, I was shook. We were both capable of becoming Mion or Shion. But because I was the real Mion, it was only Shion legally on paper. Reversing the roles was even more easier for me. Our tone of speech, quirks, and even our auras. We had both mastered each other's habits so perfectly, even our own parents were unable to tell us apart. In fact, wasn't that exceptionally sharp Rena not able to figure out I wasn't her best friend Mion after all, despite being so close? So why? Has this Keiichi actually seen through my disguise twice?
どうして私がお姉じゃないって思うんですか
My ears perked up, eager to hear the answer. Keiichi's reply was a soft murmur, like an insect's whisper, as he gasped for breath in pain. His voice was so quiet, it was nearly inaudible. I could almost recognize the words on his lips. Yes, just a feeling, he says.
へえ
Yet again, it was just a feeling. Didn't he say the exact same thing to me that time at the toy store? How nice, how nice. What a splendid answer. You think why my sister of all people fell in love with him? However, no. Rather, it was exactly because of this. Along with my raving madness, the blood that was simmering in my veins until just now rapidly began to turn chill and coagulate. If I were to describe it, it felt like stagnant muddy water flowing through a gutter. Even now, it was all so hilarious, I could fall over laughing, but I didn't smile. On the contrary, my face was vacant and austere, like a no-mask, frigid ice. And then, the darkness seeped into the innermost depths of my mind. I was already parting with my self-restraint as a human being. I reached out and touched Keiichi's hair, matted with sweat and caked with blood. Keiichi whips his head away at once in disgust, as if he were staving off a housefly, and glares at me defiantly.
触るなこの鬼め返せミオンを返せよ俺の最高の友人だったミオンを返せ
Having lost liberty over his whole body, he continued to howl and cry as if he were spewing blood. I was supposed to have sold my soul to the devil and become a demon, but faced with such a bitter rejection, I felt the crumbling remnants of my emotions stir within me. Munch, crunch, munch, crunch, munch, crunch. My throat begins to itch. The crooks of my elbows, my wrists, and every other joint in my body begins to tingle and prickle, and I feel irrationally restless. The more the restlessness and irritation pile up, the more the squalling, whimpering person beside me felt bothersome, revolting, so awful I could slaughter him right away. be frank, until just now I had no intention of killing Keiichi. I was truly ready to spare at least his life if he guessed the right answer. That was the rule I had decided upon. Okay, I'll admit it. Just like Shion, I had also fallen in love with Keiichi. He was incredibly silly and good-natured, unbelievably warm-hearted and gentle. Talking to him made me feel contented. Besides, I even sympathized with him. Unlike the lot I'd dealt with so far, Keiichi was indeed just a victim, caught up in my selfish revenge drama. Now that my revenge against the Sonozaki family was almost complete, I didn't mind saving him. That may sound too convenient, but perhaps the human side of me that was fond of Keiichi wanted to save him, in order to seek his forgiveness for my actions. But I've changed my mind. Having witnessed Keiichi guess the right answer before my very eyes, my heart was suffused with a stinging, gaping, overpowering darkness, as if it were freezing over. Why? Why was Shion alone able to meet such a wonderful person? Satoshi-kun could only make a vague distinction between me and Shion. Satoshi-kun abandoned me and ran away. However, this Keiichi trusts Shion, defending Shion, whom he values as his best friend, by seeing through my lies. As a result, he gave up on me. Detestable, maddening, despicable, enviable. So much so that I wanted to kill them. That's right, the moment he defended Shion, he became one of them. He's equally guilty, you low-life scum. I despise you. I despise you, I despise you, I despise you, I despise you, I despise you. Fucking piece of shit. I'm currently tied to a table. How do you expect me to get out of here? Munch, crunch, munch, crunch, munch, crunch. Ah, what a nuisance. Shion's screams come from the corner of the chamber, were enjoyable before, but now they felt unbearably noisy and pissed me off. How about if I just get rid of Shion first? I wanted to kill her after she had the most exquisite taste of anguish and terror. Now I could barely suppress the indiscriminate urge to slaughter welling up within me. Keiichi was relentlessly yelling his protest towards me. His throat closed up eventually and he gasped for breath hoarsely, continuing to demand Mion's return.
メイドの土産なんて気の利いたものじゃないけれど、どうしても知りたがっているようだから、一つだけ教えてあげるよ。私の中に鬼が宿ったのはずいぶん前。その鬼は私を蝕み、強行に駆り立てようとした。だけれど、私はそれを理性で押さえつけた。鬼はそれで収まり、私はその鬼はどこかへ行ってしまったんだと思い込んでいた。でも、本当は違った。私の中から出て行ったんじゃなく、私の中で眠っていただけだったの。
Yes. When I learned about Satoshi-kun's disappearance, my ailing heart had crammed itself with rage to compensate for the despair. But that was the limit of my insanity. I would never have snapped. Time had healed me. My memories of Satoshi-kun were neatly wrapped up and pushed into the back of my
その
mind.
鬼は、ある小さなことをきっかけに、また目覚めてしまった。それは、何に原因があったと思う？
It really was the smallest of the smallest things.
鬼の私が教えるのも変だけれど、あんたが全てをおかしくしてしまった元凶。
Tear rolled down my cheek. That's right. Back then, if you hadn't given that doll to Mion, none of this would have happened.
ケイちゃんには理解できないだろうね。理解できなくて当然。だけどね、そこからドミノ倒しみたいに、パタパタパタと、いろんなものが倒れ始めて、はじめの小さな一つを倒したあなたに自覚がないのは当然だろうけど、あなたが元凶なの。
Back then, Keiichi hadn't shown any affection. Shion wouldn't have been overjoyed. She wouldn't... Okay, I think they have some grammatical errors. She wouldn't have been overjoyed and cheerfully boast about him to me. As I was listening to her, I was reminded of Satoshi-kun. I became jealous of her for having someone she loved so close to her. It was a very small jealousy, but it had awoken the demon who was sleeping deep inside of me. After that, I just let the demon take over. The demon fed upon the copious amount of sadness I held for Satoshi-kun. In return, it committed heinous acts that Satoshi-kun himself would never be happy with, all in the name of avenging him. And now, the horrific events that had followed were inviting me to the realm of demons that had no return.
そんな嘘だろ。
自覚がないのは当然。でも紛れもなく元凶なのはケイちゃん。
Back then, if you hadn't chosen to give the doll to Mion, we could have arrived at a different future. No, that wasn't right. Wouldn't pinpointing Keiichi's small action as the beginning be the height of transferring blame? I was implying such a silly thing had awoken the demon inside me. Even without Keiichi's act, it would have awoken anyway. At the end of the day, it was all my fault. I didn't fight the demon, I allowed it to reside in my soul, and I readily offered it my heart. Keiichi didn't hide his tears, they were pouring down his cheeks. Maybe he was crying in my place, as I was not free to do so, having chosen to become a tearless demon. That was why I must go on, as the demon. There was no room for human emotions or hesitation anymore. And then, munch crunch, munch crunch, munch crunch, snap. Shion's wails rasping like silk tearing apart, along with my screams of ecstasy. The last thing I heard were those everlasting reverberations. June 1983. A case of serial disappearances occurred in Hinamizawa village, Shishibone City. The suspect is Shion Sonozaki. Allegedly, she abducted, imprisoned, and killed 4 Hinamizawan residents: Oryu Sonozaki, Kichiro Kimiyoshi, Rika Furude, and Sadako Hojo, between June 19th and the 21st. Preliminary investigation into the incident was delayed at the time due to insufficient evidence, but by chance, the case was solved rather abruptly. On the morning of the 22nd, a patrol vehicle stationed outside the Sonozaki mansion heard screams from within, and personnel infiltrated the premises as an emergency measure. The suspect's missing elder sister, Mion Sonozaki, and 2 of her classmates, Keiichi Maibara and Reina Ryugu, were taken into custody. However, Keiichi Maibara, who had previously been lured into the crime scene, had sustained stab wounds perpetrated by the suspect, was immediately transferred to an emergency unit, but they were diagnosed as a minor injury. Having been the one with the utmost opportunity to engage in conversation with the suspect until the very end, he will be subject to interrogation once he has recovered from the shock. Furthermore, the apprehended suspect was found collapsed at a place approximately 2 meters away from where Keiichi Maibara was restrained, and sustained scratch wounds on her throat. He was also transferred to an emergency facility, but was pronounced dead at 13:48 on the 22nd. The official autopsy determines that the immediate cause of death was hemorrhagic shock due to excessive blood loss. Hair, pieces of skin, and blood of the 4 missing people, Oryu Sonozaki, Kichiro Kimiyoshi, Rika Furude, and Sadako Hojo, were recovered from the hidden chamber that was discovered in the outbuilding basement of the Sonozaki family property, where they were supposedly killed. It was concluded that the victims were assaulted in that hidden chamber. The victims' bodies were discovered at the bottom of an old well, as per the testimony of the victim, Mion Sonozaki. In addition, investigations continue into any possible connection to the series of mysterious deaths in recent years, but no evidence of Shion Sonozaki's direct or indirect involvement has been found. There are still many obscurities to the motive behind the incident, due to extreme non-cooperation from the Sonozaki family and the residents of Hinamizawa. A large amount of time will be required to clarify matters on this front. The local police who are familiar with the region offer that this may have been an internal lynching incident, punishment for sacrilegious acts carried out against Hinamizawa's religious beliefs. It has been established that the incident is unique and rooted in the regional community beliefs, and a cautious investigation has been ordered by the prefectural police. We expect to gain valuable hints from the missing person and the suspect's sister, Mion Sonozaki, who was under confinement for the longest time period. It was observed she had sustained severe mental trauma from the incident, and her inquiry has been postponed in favor of her psychological and physical recovery. According to her primary care physician, although her condition is fairly serious, there is a strong prospect of recovery, and she is at present undergoing rehabilitation with support from her close friends. Well, the friends she has left, because most of them are dead. Several weeks have passed since then. After that incident, I was rescued by Oishi-san and his team, whom Rena had summoned. I had no other after effects aside from my consciousness that had been wiped white. If I were to have any at all, it would have to be the deep scars that had been left inside my heart. As I was being examined at the hospital, I was subject to various inquiries from Oishi-san. I tried to answer him with whatever little I knew, but I had no idea if I met his expectation. Neither did I bear any responsibility to do so. From what I heard, Shion had already lost too much blood by the time the police arrived. She had stopped breathing. They urgently called for an ambulance and took her to the clinic, but there was barely any time for first aid, and she took her last breath. The silver lining was that Mion, who had been captive in her cell, was safe and taken into custody by the police. Up until the moment I lost consciousness, I was afraid that Shion may fly into a rage and murder Mion, but I was just glad we managed to avoid the worst case scenario. Only when Mion was rescued, who was emaciated and had sustained severe psychological trauma. Apparently at the time of her rescue, she had been completely unable to respond to the police's questions. Right now, Mion is admitted at a large hospital in the vicinity, undergoing treatment for her psychological and physical injuries. In the beginning, when Rena and I went to visit, her eyes were downcast in desolation. She looked completely worn out. It was a horrible state to be in. But despite it all, as of late, she's on her way to recovery, finally well enough to show us a few smiles. Of course, we have been careful to not bring up Sadako or Rika-chan, and especially Shion. Police later conducted an on-site investigation at the Sonozaki's house, underground storehouse, several days after the incident took place. Particularly, the well inside which Sadako and Rika-chan's bodies were disposed of by Shion was carefully surveyed by the prefectural forensic investigators, and true to Shion's testimony, the girls were discovered. Apparently, sediment had accumulated at the bottom of the well, and hence the discovery had taken several days. Along with Sadako and the other victims, skeletal remains that were several decades old were found. It's not like I would much know about that. Even I was once summoned back to that place to assist with the crime scene investigation, but I didn't really help them find anything important. The Sonozaki family in Okonomiya, in other words Mion and Shion's parents, came home every day, several times, along with their many followers to formally apologize. No matter how much my parents refused, they kept piling up banknotes worth millions of yen as compensation. And once that money had piled up and reached a certain amount, on the same day there came an envelope with a letter instead. I have no idea what was written in that letter, but my parents had discussed among themselves for 2 nights straight without consulting me, and decided we would move away from Hinamizawa.
そっか。引っ越しちゃうんだね。
Once again, this is the non-canon ending.
いつ？
来月の終わり。ひなみ沢には結局 半年も居つかなかったことになるな。
寂しくなるね。きっとみーちゃんも悲しむよ。
悪い。ミオンにも正直話すべきか迷ってる。
When Serena had heard me say that, she strongly insisted I had to tell her no matter
確か
what.
に今みーちゃんにそれを告げるのは酷なのかもしれない。でもケイチくんが黙っていなくなっちゃう方がきっとみーちゃんは辛いと思う。だから一緒に話しに行こう。
ああ、そうだな。
ああ、そっか。ケイちゃん、ひなみ沢からいなくなっちゃうんだ。
Even though she had heard it from me, Mion whispered those words sadly, but she didn't seem that surprised. Surely she had mentally prepared herself for this outcome somewhere inside her heart.
すまん。けど俺、いつかひなみ沢に戻ってくるつもりだ。約束する。
いいよ、無理しなくても。ここに来ても、きっとケイちゃんにいいことなんて何もないんだから。
みーちゃん。
Both Rena and I wanted to say it wasn't so, but after such a tragic incident, what verbal consolation could we offer that would help to Mion who had suffered a much greater pain than we ever had? And so, we just stood there, unable to say anything, just wallowing in silence.
私も東京に行こうかな。
え？
来週退院できるらしいんだけど、ここにいてもいいことあんまりないし、東京でなくてもどこか遠く、私のこともひなみ沢のことも知らない土地に行きたい。やり直せるなんて都合のいいことは考えてないけど、もう全部投げ出したいよ。
ミオン。
Mion had been forced to carry the name of the next head of the Sonozaki family, and the representative of the three great families, all due to a small misunderstanding. Despite feeling uncertain and weary about her unplanned responsibility, she had nevertheless been earnest and given all to fulfill her duties. But to think all of that had been concluded in such a manner was such a tremendous loss that it's almost a surprise she hadn't completely lost her mind. Who can really blame Mion anymore for making such a faint-hearted remark? And so I wanted to devote even a little bit of my remaining time here for her.
そうだな、ミオン。一緒にどこか行くか。
え？どこへ？
決まってるだろ。旅行だよ。俺がここにいられる期間はもうあまりないけど、だったらせめて少しでもいい思い出を取り返しておかないとな。東京はちょっと遠いけど、大きな町とかに足を伸ばしてうまい飯とか買い物とかさ。どうだ？
どうって言われても。
それとってもいいと思うな。行っておいでよみーちゃんね。
けどレナ一緒に来てくれないの？
After hearing that, even I grew puzzled. Hadn't I suggested all three of us hang out together?
だってレナは馬になんて蹴られたくないもん。だから二人っきりでどうぞ。あ、お土産買ってきてくれると嬉しいな。はう
Boom, Mion blushes vigorously. I was slow to react because I didn't understand what Rena was getting at. Seeing Mion's face imbued with color after a long time, my heartbeat grew faster for a moment. No, it wasn't what I implied when I suggested the idea. Depending on the point of view, wouldn't this be an invitation to a
いい
date?
か、ちょっと調子に乗りすぎたかも。
Indeed, after seeing it that way, I was overcome with embarrassment. There was no way I could back out after coming this far. This was all for Mion's sake. Pull yourself together, Keiichi, my bro.
どうだミオン。あ、もちろん医者と親御さんにはちゃんと了解を取るつもりだぜ。あんまり無理はさせないつもりだから考えておいてくれよ。
わかった。考えておくね。
はうみーちゃんが久々に可愛いよ。嬉しいな
This is such a weird ending to this. After that, we spent the day talking about harmless stuff that happened at school or in the neighborhood until it was evening. I felt like Mion had regained some of her spirit and acted a bit like she used to, so I was happy. After a few days, Mion had contacted me to say she was okay with my plan. After spending a few more days to convince my folks and Mion's parents, we set off on a day trip to Metropolis that had one of those bullet train stations. So, some clarification, so first of all, if I haven't already said this, Hinamizawa, the village in this, is based off of a real village in Japan. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It looks super cool, but it is actually quite hard to get to. It's, as the game says, it's kind of like in the mountains in the middle of nowhere. To my knowledge, like the fastest major city you can get to is probably like a 3-hour bus trip. So, I think when they said the bullet train, they meant just a city with a bullet train, because there's no way they took a bullet train there. It's not physically possible. And this is talking just modern day Japan. I don't even know what it was like in 1983. There would have been probably far fewer train stops, bus lines, all that kind of stuff. As soon as she stepped out of the station, Mion set her eyes on a scenery sprawling with people and cars. She shared her feelings and excitement as she looked on admiringly. What I heard, unless it's on very important business, Mion rarely gets to leave the village, let alone come out to a big city like this. Because of that, everything she saw looked fresh and fascinating to her. She pranced around merrily, almost like a child.
そうだな。ミオンの好みから考えて、あそこはどうだ?
The place I was pointing to, when I checked out in advance, was a massive, beautifully decorated game arcade that towered over a corner of the station shopping square.
なかなか盛大に遊び回ったな。
面白かった。あんなにゲームで遊んだの、本当に久しぶりだよ。
As I sat down on the bench, Mion was gleefully draining her can of juice with a huge smile. That expression was unlike the gloomy one Mion had worn at the hospital. Next to me was the Mion I knew well. Earlier, we'd had a blast vowing to conquer all the game consoles in the vicinity, and made quite the ruckus without caring about the people watching. Mion was enjoying herself, playing on consoles she wasn't used to, gone on a rampage, laughing out loud, getting worked up, and challenging me to matches. Although I couldn't help thinking about what-ifs as I was playing with her. About how much fun it would have been if only it weren't just the two of us. Also Rena, Sadako, and Rika-chan as well. I'm sure Mion must have been thinking the same thing, which is why I outdid myself, making so much noise, trying to battle the loneliness, when I had realized... With faint drops of sweat coating her forehead, Mion turned to face me with a broad smile. Mion's cheerfulness was most likely just her being considerate towards me for having brought her here. If that was so, then I needed to do the same for her.
お前、全部初めてって言ってたけど、それ本当か？初プレイで2台もハイスコアに名前入れるなんて、とんでもない実力だぜ。
4台の間違いだよ、ケイちゃん。こういうのはセンスと勘、そして動体視力がものを言うのさ。普段の鍛錬を怠らなかった成果だよ。むしろケイちゃんはアドバンテージをひっくり返されたことを恥と思うべきだね。
おいおい、ちょっと待てよ。エアホッケーの時とか、あれ何？なんて後ろを指さして。まったく容赦のないやつだぜ。
勝てば官軍、負ければ賊軍だよ。
For the time being, it's alright for well-being as a front. All I hope for is that someday this becomes real and she recovers her old cheerful self.
いやいや、それにしてもゲーセンも雰囲気が変わったよな。少し前ならタバコ臭くて暗いイメージだったけど、家族連れで遊びに来る人も結構いたからちょっと驚いたぜ。
そうだね。やっぱたまにはこういうのも楽しいよね。あ、今何時ぐらい
？5時くらいかな。
ああ、じゃあ夕食まであと少しだね。どこかで食べて帰る？
そうだな。ファーストフードでハンバーガーなんてどうだ？
おお、いいね。あ、その前にちょっと失礼。
Mion said that and stood up from the bench. Found it odd for a minute. Then I understood her intention
店に
and...
もトイレはあるぞ。うわっ
Instead of a reply, I had empty cans thrown at me. Mion stuck her tongue out at me and left in a hurry. As I watched her retreating figure, I plopped back down on the bench, looked up at the sky. The sky was pure blue and crystal clear, and it felt amazing. Everything seemed to be glowing, bathed in the brilliant summer sun. The good thing we came here. Mion also seemed to show signs of
そう
recovery.
だな。なんなら今度はいっそ東京にでも誘ってみるか。
It would be cheaper if she stayed at our new place there, but I feel like our parents may be concerned for a while. We still needed some more time to go back to how it was.
そうなると泊まる場所も探しておかないとな。あとは。
Why, hello there.
ああ、こんにちは。
いやー、ごめんケイちゃん。トイレ人いっぱいでさ。あ、結構待たせちゃったみたいだから飲み物買ってきた。どっちがいい？あれ、ケイちゃん寝ちゃったの？もうしょうがないな。女の子とのデート中に居眠りなんてエチケット違反だよ。ケイちゃん、もういつまで寝てるんだよ。ほら起きて。ケイちゃん、はっ、
Okay, I have no idea what happened. We're just at the park having a nice date and someone slashes our throat. And yeah, so that was the non-canon ending, which is apparently the bad ending, even though it seemed really nice up until the point where we got our throat slashed. So we're gonna load save, do the other half. We might run a bit longer than our normal 2 hours, but we're so close to the end that... Gonna deal with that. Okay. Goodbye, bot. Thank you. So yeah, so we're gonna do the other half of this. We might run a bit longer. Because after this, we also have to do the post-game party, which is always fun. Okay, so that was the top one. So now we're gonna do, and then I turned around to face Keiichi.
いい加減にしろ。
Keiichi squeezed out those words. He sounded good. He was about to bite me.
私、さっき嘘をついたね。シオンを一番むごたらしく殺してやろうと思って閉じ込めておいたけど、まだ思いつかないって言ったやつ。あれが嘘。
I smiled as I laid out the huge nails and hammer specifically made for the nail
あの
table.
子に自分のせいで死ぬ大勢の人の悲鳴をたっぷりと聞かせて、体の芯まで染み通らせてから殺すの。なかなかセンスいいでしょ。
Kind of glad we got the bad ending first.
お前は誰だ？
は？ミオンでしょ？園崎ミオン。恐怖で頭が変になっちゃった？
違うな。お前が園崎ミオンであるはずがない。
Stop moving. Kei-chan? Shit. I decided the naming game would be over once we reached Shion's cell. Therefore, even if you guessed this time, it would be too late. Oh well. Sure. I'll listen to you. This is your last chance.
へえ。じゃあ、私がミオンじゃなかったら、私は誰なわけ？
Come on, Kei-chan. Guess who I am. Why don't you try and save Mion, the girl who fell in love with you?
え？
Okay, this is the real ending, where he says we are a demon.
お前はミオンじゃない。さっきまで一緒だったミオンを返せ。
ケイちゃん、本当に頭は大丈夫？恐怖で頭がどうかなっちゃった？
触るな！この鬼め！返せ！ミオンを返せよ！俺の最高の友人だったミオンを返せ！
I listened to him with a blank
ミオンを目の
expression.
前にしてミオンを返すなどとよまい事であることは分かってる。でも目の前の今のこいつは断じてミオンではありえない。認めるわけにはいかないんだ。
That's great. So I'm not Mion or Shion. He doesn't even see me as my sister. No, wait, that's not it. Keiichi protected the Mion in his heart until the end. He didn't accept the fact that Mion was a murderer. And not just that either, he protected the Shion in his heart as well. He didn't conclude that if Mion wasn't a murderer, then it must have been Shion. To Keiichi, Shion was someone who always made fun of Mion. That was it. It wasn't like they'd known each other for a long time. But Keiichi protected her. He protected Shion from being a murderer. That's why I'm a demon, and not Mion or Shion, huh? A demon, huh? A demon. That's stupid. But isn't that just right on the money?
私を笑い涙で溺れ殺すつもり？
However, Keiichi didn't back off. He kept screaming. He screamed loudly, so that I could hear his voice even when I was stuck inside of a demon.
頑張れミオン！こんな鬼畜生に負けるな！本当に強いお前の力を見せてくれ！
Surely he isn't talking to me knowing that I'm the real Mion, right? Just confusing us again. There's no reason to let my heart be disturbed by Keiichi's screams towards Mion.
頼むよミオン！ミオン！どこでお前はこんな鬼に負けちまったんだ！お前はこんな弱いやつじゃないだろう！負けるな！戦え！戦え！
He's right. I didn't fight back. How did he know? How did he know I didn't fight back? I lost to the demon. After all, I'm weak. I'm not strong enough to defeat the demon. Even so, Keiichi continued to talk to Mion. His voice had become hoarse, and he'd begun sobbing. He kept mumbling, Mion,
ケイ
Mion.
ちゃん、メイドの土産なんて気の利いたものじゃないけれど、どうしても知りたがっているようだから一つだけ教えてあげるよ。私の中に鬼が宿ったのはずいぶん前。その鬼は私を蝕み強行に駆り立てようとした。だけれど私はそれを理性で押さえつけた。鬼はそれで収まり、私はその鬼はどこかへ行ってしまったんだと思い込んでいた。でも本当は違った。私の中から出て行ったんじゃなく、私の中で眠っていただけだったの。
That was the truth. When I learned about Satoshi-kun's disappearance, my weak soul couldn't take the sadness, and anger filled me to the brim. But the insanity had stopped there. Time had healed me and embraced me with memories of Satoshi-kun.
その鬼はある小さなことをきっかけにまた目覚めてしまった。それは何に原因があったと思う？
It was such a little
鬼の
thing.
私が教えるのも変だけれど、
I'm rushing this a little bit because it is more or less the same as the
あん
last
た
bit.
が全てをおかしくしてしまった元凶。
A tear rolled
あ
down my
の
cheek.
時あんたがもらった人形を躊躇なく私に渡していたなら、全ての異常は起こらなかったかもしれない。 ケイちゃんには理解できないだろうね。理解できなくて当然だけどね、そこからドミノ倒しみたいにパタパタパタといろんなものが倒れ始めて、初めの小さな一つを倒したあなたに自覚がないのは当然だろうけど、あなたが元凶なの。
Kei-chan hadn't done something so insensitive, Shion wouldn't have cried. Shion cried and talked to me about it. That had reminded me of Satoshi-kun. I became jealous of her for having someone she loved so close to her. It was a very small jealousy. That little feeling woke up the demon who was sleeping deep inside of me. After that, I just let the demon take over. The demon ate up all of my sadness from my loss of Satoshi-kun, and filled my heart with the notion of revenge, even though I knew that wouldn't make Satoshi-kun happy. Then, the scary incidents that followed dragged me to hell, from whence there was no escape.
そんな嘘だろ。
自覚がないのは当然。でも紛れもなく元凶なのはケイちゃん。あの時あんたがさりげなく人形を私にあげていたら、多分こんなことにはならなかったと思う。
Was I simply transferring the blame to Keiichi? Such a tiny thing woke up the demon inside of me. The demon would have woken up eventually. I was at fault. I didn't fight back. I let the demon live in my soul, and I let the demon possess me. Keiichi didn't hide his tears. They were pouring down his cheeks. Maybe he was crying in my place, since I'd become a demon and couldn't cry of my own will.
じゃあそろそろいいよ。このやり方はね、左手の小指の先端の節に釘を打つ。順に親指まで打ったらまた小指に戻って、今度は真ん中の節に釘を打つ。この調子で15本の釘で左手を打ちつけ。
Yep, so if this isn't clear... So, I don't know, you have a finger, your finger has 3 joints, bottom, middle, top. So you do the bottom of all of the fingers, then you do the middle of all the fingers, then the top of all the fingers. So 3 per finger, 5 fingers per hand is 15 nails per hand. Then you do the other hand for 30 nails.
それが終わったら次は右手。それが終わったら次はまだ意識があったら教えるね。指先ってたくさんの神経が集まってるから。
And yes, your fingertips are especially sensitive.
両手30本を打ち終える前に失神しちゃう人もいるそうだから。
And, you know, it's because you touch a lot of things, so it has to be a bit more sensitive. I put a nail to Keiichi's left pinky. Once I hit it with the huge hammer, it would start. And it would be over.
他の人を相手にするときには何のためらいもなかったけど、なぜかあんたにはためらいがあるよ。
それでミオンの鬼が収まるなら気の済むようにやってくれ。
I didn't understand what he just said, so I tried to repeat his words in my
あん
head.
た本気で言ってるの？
俺が傷つけたミオンの痛みに比べればこんなの大したことないんだろ。気の済むようにするといい。その代わり2つ約束しろ。俺を気が済むまで痛めつけたらシオンは許してやれ。細工でに忍び込んだ罪にはそれで十分見合う仕打ちをしたはずだ。
あんたこの後に及んで自分よりシオンの心配ができるわけ？
I am Mion Sonozaki. So are my eyes growing so damp when hearing Keiichi show concern for Shion.
もう一つは気が済んだらもうお前は消えろ。その体をミオンに返してやってくれ。それだけだ。
あんたって人には命乞いをするとかそういう考えは思い浮かばないの？
約束2つじゃなくて 3つにしていいか？ 3 つ目は俺を殺すなにしてくれ。
最初に2つって言ったでしょ。だからもうダメ。
そいつは残念。
Even in this situation, Keiichi and I joked around and laughed. And then I knew. I knew why Shion fell in love with him. He's different from Satoshi-kun, but he's a good guy.
多分私は約束を守らないよ。鬼だから。
その時は仕方がないさ。
Keiichi smiled and then closed his
ケイちゃ
eyes.
ん、今の3つ目の願いだけは聞いてもいいよ。1つ目の願い、シオンを救うこと。これはもう無理。シオンは鬼が殺してしまう。それはもう決められたことだから止められない。だから諦めて。
Hello, Samuses. Welcome back. I stroked Keiichi's
そして
chin.
2つ目の願い、この体をミオンに返すこと。これももう無理。今日を境にミオンが戻ってくることはもうない。今日以降、もし私の姿があったとしても、私の姿をした鬼だから。
そんなことはない。ミオンはミオンだ。もう戻ってこないなんて悲しいことを言うな。
聞こえる？あの音。
I'd been hearing a noise. I knew what it had to be. Bang. Bang. A dull sound was repeating in a regular rhythm. It was accompanied by a light tremor. People were trying to force the iron door to the underground storehouse.
帰りが遅いからレナが大石を呼んだんでしょ。
Should have tortured us sooner then.
あのぼやっとした感じの子がこんなに頭が回るのだけは計算外だったな。
それについては同感だよ。
Really? Wonder how much Keichan really knows about Rena. Rena Ryugu. I won this time. Rena couldn't figure out who I was until the end. Or maybe she did. Rena didn't seem confused about whether I was Mion or Shion. Perhaps Rena could tell Mion and Shion apart through her sense of smell. She was good at that kind of thing. No way. I'm overestimating her. I brought out my stun gun so Keiichi could see the
見たこと
sparks.
ないでしょ。本物のスタンガンだよ。かなり出力が上げられるようになってるけどね。
さっき俺に食らわせたのはそれか。子供のおもちゃには向かねえぞ。
そうだね。
Bang. I must have broken the first door. The path was complicated. There was no other door except for the one to this torture room.
殺さないけど、しばらくケイちゃんにはお休みしててもらうね。すぐに大石が来てくれるから。ちょっとの我慢。
Keiichi bit down and smiled bitterly. I paused, hesitating a little. Keiichi opened his eyes to see what was wrong.
ミオンを怪我して。
ここに入る前に約束した。何があっても俺の中のミオンは変わらない。
でも忘れて。
Hello, Avier. How's it going?
今日以降、もしも私を見かけても近寄らないでね。それは私の屍に取り付いた鬼なんだから。
Bzz. Keiichi fell unconscious. Yes, you're playing Left 4 Dead 2, is that right? How did that go? I locked the door to the torture room. I locked the door to the huge cave, too. That should give me some
シオ
time.
ン、さあ出ておいで。
I opened the cell and told Shion to leave it. She was
あんた
crying.
がケイちゃんを見逃してほしいと祈ったから。
Oh, you did the 4v4
One
verses?
of
I've never actually done the verses on Left 4 Dead 2. I've only done the campaign stuff.
ケイちゃんはスタンガンで伸びてるだけ。もうすぐ警官隊が来るから解放されるよ。ありがとう、ありがとう。でもシオンにはまだ用がある。ここから脱出するの。
I took Shion to the cell with the hidden passage.
その前にシオン、あんたにミオンを返すわ。脱げ、その服。交換だよ、また。ほら、紙のゴムバンド。
Shion had no idea what was going on, but she changed her clothes as I ordered her to. I gave her the flashlight, and she hung it around her
あ
neck.
んたから先にどうぞ。井戸の底にあるとかいう隠し通路を探すの。
The light from the flashlight was enough to entirely illuminate the way down. Nobody in their right mind would want to descend that well, but Shion obeyed and timidly climbed down the ladder. When she had passed entirely below the rim of the well, I brought out my stun gun and put it to Shion's head. Shion understood the meaning of
お
that.
姉ちゃん。
あんたの望み通り、ケイちゃんは救った。代わりにあんたを殺してもいいってことだったもんね。お姉はちゃんと約束は守るよ。
Shion's hands and feet were clinging to a very unstable ladder, so there was no way she could protect herself. She was in a critical
ミオンの
situation.
格好をしたあんたはここから落ちておだぶつ。私はシオンの格好だからね。ケイちゃんが被害者だと立証してくれるよ。私は岩牢の中で警官隊の助けを待つ。まあ指紋なんかでバレるだろうけどさ、その頃にはどこかへ身を隠してるってわけ。お姉もなかなかやるでしょ。
私を殺すとサトシの復讐になる。
そこまで分かってるなら覚悟はいいよね。そこまで落ちてサトシ君に謝っといで。
お姉、この底にはね、サトシはいないよ。
は？あんたら言わなかったっけ？ここに捨てられてるって。
園崎家で殺されてればここに捨てられてると思う。そうは言った。
この後に及んでややこしいことを言うね。もうちょっと分かりやすくお姉に言ってごらん。
私もね、サトシのこと好きだったんだよ。
そりゃそうだろうね。私が好きになるくらいだもん。
だからサトシが消えた時、私も悲しくて悔しくていろいろとね調べたんだよ。
それで
バッチャにね詰め寄ったんだよ。絞め殺してやろうってくらいに。
You request that I also play Umineko? At some point, I will probably get around to it at some point.
そしたらバッチャが教えてくれた。次期当主にしか話さないよ。絶対に内緒だよって。
What she said was something hard to believe. The hag said to Shion, the Sonozaki family had nothing to do with the disappearance of Satoshi-kun. Shion couldn't understand, so she asked again. The Sonozaki family held a lot of influence in the underworld because of our dad's connections. In fact, they used such illegal measures during the dam conflict. Therefore, people just assumed the Sonozaki family had pulled the strings when the dam construction incident took place. Even the hag laughed meaningfully and said suspicious things, so everyone believed she was the mastermind. But it was all a performance. It was a hoax by the Sonozaki family head. It was just a bluff. The family took credit for the incident to make it look like they were pulling the strings. With the influence they already had, this bluff was very believable. Therefore, people thought of the Sonozaki family as one that had deep connections in the underworld, and that were capable of producing any sort of conspiracy. People have believed that since the dam conflict. Oreo just smiled at things she had nothing to do with, as if she was pulling the strings. When the relatives saw that, they became fearful of Oreo's power. When the dam construction site manager was killed, Oreo smiled meaningfully. When the relatives saw that, they assumed Oreo was behind it. When the Hojo couple fell off the cliff, The Furude couple died violently, and Satoshi-kun's aunt died, and Satoshi-kun disappeared. The hag just smiled meaningfully. Everyone believed the Sonozaki family was behind all those incidents.
嘘だ。あの事件が園崎家が関わってないってわけ？そんなの信じると思う？私はバッチャがね、特にサトシの思想については本当に知らないって言ったの。だってサトシとお姉の交際、バッチャは許したんだよ。爪を見事剥いで見せたから全部忘れるって言って。嘘だ嘘だ、手任せを言うな。じゃあ誰がサトシ君を消したの？誰が？それだけはわからない。でもね、園崎家じゃない、バッチャじゃない。あんただってタタリのシステムは知ってるでしょ。別にサトシ君を襲えとわざわざばあさんが指示しなくても気を利かす誰かが襲う、そういう仕掛けでしょうが。
Shion couldn't say anything in response. Even if the hag had forgiven him personally, as long as he was the object of the curse, the executioner would follow him forever.
バッチャはね、お社様のたたり誰が起こしてるのかなって長いこと調べたんだって。だけど見つけられなかった。誰もが村の中の誰かって信じてるのに、村の中にそんな人は存在しないの。存在しない？しないならなんで毎年たたりが起きるわけ？おかしいよね。でもいないの、いないんだって。フルでリカが私に首をかきむしる注射で襲いかかってきたってのは話したよね。それはどう説明するの？急須猫を噛むって状況じゃない。向こうから訪ねてきて催涙スプレーと注射器で襲いかかってきた。おそらく同じ注射で富武さんが殺されてるんだと思う。それはわからない。リカちゃんがそんなことするなんて信じられないよ。実際に見た私でも信じられないよ。あの死に方を見りゃね。
I don't think Shion and the hag are lying. That would mean the hag wasn't in as much control as we thought she was, though. She didn't know anything about that scary drug, or if the Furude family was the one executing the curse. If the Sonozaki family had nothing to do with it, then who made the series of mysterious deaths possible? Was it just a coincidence that something happened 5 years in a row on the night of Watsunagashi? That's impossible. A human must have made it happen. It was all decided somewhere the Sonozaki family wasn't aware of. Kimiyoshi family didn't know anything. Kimiyoshi believed the Sonozaki family was behind it. Was it the Furude family? With Rika's behavior and the elderly people who believed in her so blindly, did some kind of power exist around the Furude family that created the curse? No way. The Furude couple themselves were victims of it. How could a little girl like Rika possess a power stronger than that of the Sonozaki family? No way, it's just impossible. In other words, I'd killed the heads of all the 3 families and was trying to bring an end to the whole thing, all as a result of a misunderstanding about the dark secret of Hinamizawa. And what about my revenge? Did I kill all the wrong people? People who had nothing to do with Satoshi-kun's disappearance at all?
やるね、シオン。最後の最後で私の復讐劇をひっくり返そうってわけ。お姉ちゃん、信じて。私は仇なんかじゃない。信じてよ、お姉ちゃん。
Shion begged with tears in her eyes. That would have affected me if I was still Shion's sister. But I don't feel anything anymore, because I'm a demon. I'll be done once I kill Shion. I've already decided that. If I don't finish it up, what would my existence be for? What about the life I devoted to revenge for Satoshi-kun? How dare she tell me all this nonsense to confuse me at the very end? What she said was the truth. And what I'd done wasn't revenge. It was just the curse of the 5th year.
シオン
Prince is playing Phasma, so I should be careful. Just don't have him read the Luigi board, and then I won't have to just appear and hunt him.
あんたが
If I was a
本当に
demon, I
無
mean.
実ならあんたは天国へ行けるね。サトシ君に謝っておいて。
おね。
A bluish-white spark lit up the darkness, and Shion disappeared into the well.
天国でサトシ君に謝って。私は天国には行けないから謝れない。
Instead, I'm going deep into hell. Jumping into this well would be too simple an atonement for what I've done. Until I find a perfect way to end my life, I'm going to live as best I can. So, Samus, I guess you missed it. I think this was while you were away. We got to the choice in this game. Jeez, there's more. Okay, let me see how much more there is. We got the bad ending at one point. Wow, apparently there's another chapter. It is not the end. There is another chapter. Okay, so let's start with viewing the tips. Or tip, I think we just have the one. Shion Sonozaki's last confession is dubious. Did the hag convince her that the Sonozaki family had nothing to do with it? Or is that the truth? In my own investigation so far, I've proven there are aspects of the curse which can't be explained by the Sonozaki family alone. So my notes were all bogus from the beginning. These 200 pages are full of bullshit. I thought of burning this notebook, but I won't do it. This notebook proves my guilt. I won't distort the facts. I won't burn it. After all, my life was only a notebook long. I wonder if anybody will read this. If somebody does, please let them learn something from my stupidity. A series of mysterious deaths in Hinamizawa. Thank you for the lurk, diehard Zelda. Dubbed Oyashiro-sama's curse. If you're reading this, please find the truth. That's my only wish. June 1983. Neon Sonozaki. Okay. There's another chapter plus the after party. I guess we have another stream. Apparently. So yeah, I guess this is where we call it. I was really not expecting to have another stream after this.